let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a profoundly beautiful and mythic archetype. And as your guide, I am beyond excited to take you on this journey. We are going to deeply explore how true invincibility in storytelling doesn't come from cold, hardened strength, but from a radically wholesome and open human heart. We're going to fundamentally explain the topics surrounding absolute power and unpack a massive shift in how we view what makes someone truly unbreakable in modern narratives.
Your strength became invincibility the moment it stopped being about you and became about what you protect. Wow, just sit with that for a second. This idea instantly flips the traditional script on power, doesn't it? It forces us to slow down and really unpack the emotional gravity behind fighting for others rather than just fighting for yourself. Because look, invincibility isn't about how thick your physical armor is or how many hits you can take. It's entirely about the purpose behind your strength. When power stops being a selfish tool for personal ambition and instead transforms into a shield for those you love, its entire nature changes. It shifts from being fragile and conditional to becoming truly, absolutely unshakable.
So, to thoroughly explain the topics today, here is our roadmap. Number 1, the most human person. 2, alchemy of true invincibility. 3, transforming others through empathy. 4, emotional gravity and leadership. And finally, number 5, humanity as heroic destiny. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The most human person, amplifying humanity for overwhelming strength.
Okay, so being called the most human person isn't just a sweet little compliment. We're not just saying, oh, they're a nice guy. No, this is a recognition of the absolute rarest heroic archetype out there. It's a state where emotional vulnerability literally morphs into an unstoppable superpower. Think about it. In a world where most people suppress their humanity just to survive the day-to-day trauma, this specific kind of hero does the exact opposite. They take those core human traits, the compassion, the grief, the love, the deep understanding, and they amplify them. They amplify them until they become a literal force of nature. It's a classification reserved strictly for characters whose internal emotional capacity vastly outscales their physical environments.
It's honestly the ultimate paradox. The traditional hero usually believes they have to harden their heart to endure a cruel world, right? They build these massive emotional walls, basically thinking that if they care less, well, they can't be hurt. And if they can't be hurt, they can't be defeated. But the most human person totally flips that. They realize you don't become legendary by numbing your pain. Actually, scratch that. You achieve true mythic status by feeling more deeply and caring more fiercely than anyone else in the room. You literally open your heart to become invincible, turning what the rest of the world sees as a glaring, massive vulnerability into an infinite well of resolve. Let's take a minute to reflect on some beloved characters who perfectly embody this trait, because their shared secret isn't just raw genetic talent or, intense training montages. It's an overwhelming warmth, almost a radical humanity that makes them absolutely impossible to corrupt or break. Take Tanjiro, for example. His compassion doesn't just make him a gentle person, it literally powers his blade. It allows him to see the opening threat in battle, precisely because he genuinely understands the sorrow of his enemies. Or look at Mob. His raw emotional capacity doesn't just affect his mood, it quite literally reshapes reality around him. Then you have Emma, whose boundless empathy fuels an entire societal revolution. You've got Deku, where kindness manifests as a furious, unstoppable heroic drive just to save one single person. And Yuji Itadori, whose absolute grounding in normal, everyday human grief keeps him perfectly sane when housing an ancient evil. For all of them, their humanity is the absolute source of their overwhelming capability.
So the crucial question we have to ask ourselves right now is this: how does this gentle, soft humanity practically forge such undeniable invincibility in the heat of battle? What is the actual precise internal math happening here?
That brings us to Section 2, alchemy of true invincibility, forging the hero's core. Here is the core formula, the absolute blueprint of how this archetype operates. First up, kindness. Kindness is not a soft, passive trait, okay? It is a profound direction. It tells your overwhelming strength exactly where it needs to go. Then, empathy. Empathy acts as the fuel. It's the emotional ignition that keeps the engine running long after the physical body should have quit. Then we mix in experience, which provides the literal armor and the hard-earned wisdom required to actually survive the blows. Throw in purpose, which grants an unshakable direction, ensuring the hero never gets lost in their own immense power. And finally, will. Will becomes the immoral spirit that simply refuses to stay down. When you combine all these elements, you don't just get a really strong fighter, no way. You get an immovable object. Experience didn't just teach you, it transformed you. It's incredibly essential to understand the depth of this statement. Every single scar, every brutal setback you endure, it doesn't close you off. Instead, it opens you up to a profound tactical advantage. Think about Zoro facing Mihawk very early on. He suffers a massive, utterly devastating defeat. But that massive scar across his chest, it didn't make him fearful. It didn't make him closed off or cynical. Instead, it completely transformed his naive ambition into a profound, unbreakable spirit. He recognized the monumental gap in his strength, absorbed all that agonizing pain, and used it to fortify his resolve to literally never lose again. Your scars become your wisdom. Your experience doesn't just make you tired, it makes you legendary.
Moving on to Section 3, Transforming Others Through Empathy, the Catalyst of Heart.
Listen, empathy in this context isn't just passive listening. It isn't just nodding along or feeling sorry for someone. It is an active, brilliant superpower. It acts as a perfect mirror. It sees right through people's heavy defensive armor to reveal their hidden goodness. Tanjiro does this constantly, even with his most monstrous, deeply demonic foes. He acknowledges their tragic pasts right before he defeats them. He validates their immense suffering, and in their final moments, they actually see a reflection of the humanity they lost. And here's the kicker. Once people feel truly, deeply seen by this kind of hero, they cannot go back to who they were. The empathy permanently alters their trajectory.
I absolutely love how beautifully these next examples highlight the real-world impact of this kind of radical empathy. First, it softens defenses naturally. We can call this the Mabo effect, where raw, unfiltered sincerity completely disarms even the most cynical opponents. Second, it gives immense courage, like the Kamina to Simon effect, where someone's unwavering, almost crazy belief in you becomes your actual backbone until you can finally believe in yourself. Third, it heals heavy shame. This is profoundly clear in what we can call the Chopper effect. You remember Chopper, right? He believed he was an unlovable monster, entirely defined by his physical differences. But immense, welcoming empathy completely dissolved that heavy shame, allowing him to use those very monstrous traits to heal the world instead of hiding from it. And finally, it awakens a person's better self, like the All Might to Deku effect. You don't push or force people to change. Your empathy just naturally ignites them to rise to the occasion.
It's a fascinating pivot when you really sit down and think about it. How does simply being a safe, understanding harbor for people suddenly make you the undisputed, beloved leader of the crew? Let's unpack the literal physics of that transition.
Which perfectly cues up Section 4, Emotional Gravity and Leadership, the pull of human presence.
Think about the concept of emotional gravity for a second. You don't lead by dominating people. You don't lead by demanding respect or forcing your will down people's throats. You lead because your mere presence shifts the very emotional gravity of the room. When you enter, the entire atmosphere changes. You calm the anxious and you inspire the weary, simply by being present in their space. It's a completely unconscious alignment from those around you, because your humanity is just that powerful and that remarkably consistent. People are drawn into your orbit naturally, just finding absolute stability in your unwavering compassion. It's like a giant magnet for the human soul.
Let's look at how this architecture of trust is actually built in practice. Think about Luffy. Why are people so fiercely, completely loyal to him? Why are they willing to throw away their original life plans just to help him achieve his dream? Well, it isn't a fear of his strength, not at all. It's because his sheer authenticity makes them feel completely safe, seen, and valued without a single ounce of judgment. He doesn't care about your dark past. He doesn't care about your perceived flaws. This architecture of trust awakens a daring courage in his allies. It sets this incredibly high aspirational standard of integrity and proves that true leadership remains fiercely unbreakable, even under immense pressure. People don't follow you because you're strong. They follow you because you make them feel valued, understood, safe, and inspired. The rarest form of leadership in these stories, and let's be real, in our own everyday reality, is completely aspirational. Loyalty is naturally and freely given. It's never demanded through authority or fear. People want to orbit this kind of hero because the hero makes them feel capable of true greatness. They look at you, they see their own hidden value reflected back in your eyes, and they choose to follow you because you make the world feel less terrifying and full of actual boundless potential.
And finally, Section 5, Humanity as Heroic Destiny, the Mythic Heart.
What's so deeply empowering about this entire archetype is the realization that the hero's ultimate destiny isn't just something they passively follow or stumble into. It isn't about fancy bloodlines or ancient prophecies or some predetermined fate written in the stars. Not at all. It's something they actively generate,
step by step, through their relentless compassion. Your heart is literally the pen that writes the myth. Every single act of kindness, every moment of empathy, weaves the actual fabric of your eventual legendary status. There is an exact, incredibly rare heroic ignition pattern at play here, and as your awesome guide, I want to make sure we walk through it together step by step. First, your humanity sparks your empathy, making you highly attuned to the world and the people around you. That empathy then fuels your purpose, giving you a tangible, real reason to fight. That purpose forges an unbreakable will, and that will solidifies into your core identity. Over time, that identity inevitably culminates in your mythic destiny. It is a brilliant, unbroken chain reaction of the human spirit. Every choice you make from a place of deep, wholesome empathy acts as a compass pointing true north. Your humanity naturally draws you to those in pain, literally summoning your specific calling out of the ether. It clearly defines exactly what you must do when faced with an impossible situation, and by doing so, it ensures that your legendary path is paved with the lives you've uplifted along the way. Your strength is reinforced by every single person you've saved, making you, in the truest sense of the word, entirely unbreakable. You see, destiny actually has a specific math to it. Your humanity shapes your core identity. That identity then shapes the everyday choices you make. Those choices, compounded over time, shape your life's path, and ultimately, that path shapes your final destiny. So, destiny is simply your identity multiplied by your actions. It proves that you became an invincible legend, not by abandoning your humanity in some cold pursuit of power, but by embracing it so fiercely, so completely, that it became mythic.
I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on, because understanding this archetype, it doesn't just change how we watch our favorite heroes on screen, it fundamentally changes how we choose to show up in our own lives every single day. If your true destiny is to be human at a level that literally changes the world, how will you let your own radical empathy ignite the people around you today? Keep leading with your heart, and I will see you in our next explainer.